looks like
All
Denise.
right. Yes. Hi, Denise. I do want to go ahead and get started. It's 6 o'clock Central Time. Welcome to those here now or to those watching at a later time to our event tonight, our learning event, learning to self-regulate before you co-regulate with our guest, Steve Lister. All right, Steve, I'm going to hand it off to you. You can say a little bit about yourself and we can dive right into what you have for us this evening.
Sure, thanks, Althea. Um, so my name is Steve Lister. I was saying before with Althea that nobody calls me Steven. That is actually my name, but my mom used to call me that a lot when she was mad at me. So call me Steve. I am a former teacher. I've been out of the classroom for a little while now, but I was for a couple of decades. You can see from the beard, I'm pretty old. I've been around a long time. I spent a good 23, 24 years working with kids with special needs, with mental health diagnoses, some of them with physical and mental health challenges and learning disabilities. Hello to those who have just joined. Right now, I'll just finish by saying the two parts of my career is I am a consultant in the education system here in the province of Ontario. I've been to other provinces in Canada. I haven't had the experience, maybe someday, of coming down into the US. And I run different programs in the education system, working with educators who work with children who are aggressive or violent and have some very high special needs. The other part of my career, the other half, if you will, is that I am a certified mental health educator. I run a number of different programs for an organization that is national here in Canada called the Canadian Mental Health Association. And the key programs that I run there are a suicide intervention training, which is a 2-day, very intense program. I'm soon to become a mentor for some new trainers in that program. And mindfulness and emotional regulation, self-regulation and co-regulation are really key. And in the little flyer that Athea put together for me, I have completed a book. It is in the hands of the editor. They're hoping to get it out before Christmas, my first attempt at a book. The book is called Cultivating Harmony: Navigating Our Complex World Through Mindfulness and Emotional Regulation. So that's just a little bit about me. You'll hear a little bit more about me. I hope to hear from some of you too. I'm going to get started. I see we have,
Yeah.
well, including Athea, we have three.
That's
No, that's
awesome.
fine.
Congratulations on
Oh,
the book,
thank
by
you.
the way. Super
Thank
excited
you.
for
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Love
you.
all the stuff that you're doing in the world of education and mental
Thank
health.
you. Thank
And
you.
I'm really excited to learn from you tonight. So,
Yeah, great. Okay. So with the folks we have on here right now, I'm going to take you through, this will probably take about, I want to say 4 to 5 minutes as the beginning. We'll call this a grounding exercise. And I know that the folks who are on here now and anybody who joins in the next little while probably have a fair bit of background, maybe in mindfulness and different grounding techniques and anchoring techniques. This one is actually from a program that I deliver called DBT, Dialectical Behavior Therapy. I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I am an educator, but I pulled this with permission. I pulled this from a set of textbooks and workbooks that I have, and I've used this one a couple times, and people find it quite effective. So this is actually called. I'll give you some instructions. It's called the cue controlled relaxation. Cue controlled relaxation, and this is a technique that can help you reduce your stress levels and hopefully some of the tension in your muscles. Okay. And what I'm going to ask you to do is two things to start. The first is I want you to simply, I can see Carrie, you look fairly comfortable. I can't see Denise. I'm hoping that Denise, you're in a comfortable position where you're sitting fairly alert, feet on the ground, or if you're in a lazy boy, you can have your feet up, that's fine. But I usually ask for people to have their feet on the floor to sort of to ground you to the floor, to the earth. The second thing I'd like you to do is to just think of what I call a cue word. And that cue word is a word that at the end of this little exercise, you're going to repeat to yourself. So the cue word some people choose, and you're not going to tell us. You're not going to say it out loud. It's just for yourself. Cue word could be relax, peace. Some people might choose the word grateful. So you choose your keyword in your own mind, but you're not going to actually say it out loud. You're just going to say it in your mind, okay? So I want you to, if you feel comfortable, I want you to close your eyes. If you do not feel comfortable closing your eyes, then what I would ask is that you would simply look away from the camera, and so that you're not looking at the camera. I won't be looking at you. You can just look off. If you do close your eyes, that's fine, but you do not have to. Okay. I want you to imagine yourself in a wide open meadow or field, and it's around midday. It's a beautiful sunny day, and you're just simply standing in the middle of this meadow or this wide open field. There's nobody else around. It's quiet. There's just a gentle breeze. There's not a lot of other sounds, maybe some crickets or something. Okay. What I want you to do is begin by taking a long, slow breath in through your nose and hold for 5 seconds. Breathing in through your nose, hold for 5, and slowly release through your mouth. Do that one more time. Notice your belly expanding and your belly collapsing. Big, deep breath in through your nose. Hold for 5. And breathe out through your mouth. One more. In through your nose. Hold for 5. And out through your mouth. Now you're just going to continue breathing slowly. You're not holding your breath. You're not counting. Just in and out. It can be through your nose the entire time if you wish. Just pay attention to your breathing for a few moments. Feel your breath come in and your breath go out. Now, as you are standing in the middle of this wide open field or meadow, I want you to imagine that there is a white beam of light shining down from high upon the sky that is directed at the top of your head. I want you to notice how warm and soothing that light feels on the top of your head. Now imagine the light flowing down from the top of your head over your forehead, releasing any tension that you might be storing in your forehead. Just continue breathing. Slowly let the light flow over your ears, your nose, your mouth, your chin, releasing any tension that you might be keeping in those areas. Just continue breathing. Now imagine the light flowing down over your throat and your neck and onto your shoulders, releasing any tension you might be keeping in those places in your body. Let the light flow down over your chest, over your sides. Let it flow down your back, slowly releasing any tension that might be there. Returning the light to your shoulders. Let the light flow down through your upper arm, your elbows, your forearms, your wrists, and finally into your hands, down to your fingertips, releasing any tension that you might feel in those areas. Just continue breathing. Let the light flow over your pelvis, over your buttocks, releasing any tension. Lastly, let the light flow down your thighs, down the backs of your legs, and the light is now on your knees, further down to your shins and your calves, and down into your feet. Wiggle your toes a little bit, releasing any tension that you're holding in your legs. Just continue breathing. Now, while you are breathing in a regular pattern, I want you to repeat your cue word every few seconds to yourself. Feel your body relaxing. Now say your cue word about once every 5 seconds. Just continue breathing. And we'll finish this exercise by, in your mind, sending out love to all of those that you care about and who love you back. Okay, when you are ready, if you've had your eyes closed, you can open them and bring yourself back to the room. Well, the room to the virtual room. Okay. So that exercise, as I've said, comes from uh, a foundational program that I have taken in DBT. DBT might be something of interest to you. You may be familiar with it. And the relation to CBT, although they're two different things. CBT and DBT are highly related for sure. So that is called a cue controlled relaxation. Now you can do that yourself without a voice, right? You can just imagine this beam of light um, and starting on the top of your head and just working down various parts of your body, sort of in any order, right? I did it in a particular order. So I hope that I hope that that helped you get a little bit relaxed, and it's maybe later when you've got some time to yourself or you're heading to bed, you can try some sort of other meditation practice that you wish. That's just one of many different types. Okay.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I am going to share. Now I'm just going to quickly check the chat. Oh, okay. Denise says she's in bed quite ill. Oh no. Geez. Well, thank you for being here. Not on camera, but comfortable. Okay, hopefully, Denise, you can see the screen when I share the screen here. I do have a few slides that I would like to share with you, but I'm going to go fairly quickly. I know this is being recorded, so you could go back and watch it if there was something that caught your attention that you missed. But I do want to round off the hour by showing you some exercises that you can do with your by yourself as part of a self-regulation, but you can also do with kids. Well, you can do it with anybody in your life, but do it with kids um, at the very end. And then if there's any questions, I can take those. Oh, let me just move my little dialog box. There we go. Okay. So we've already sort of done. Oh, there we go. Just want to make sure, Thea, you can see that screen.
I can see it. Can everybody else see it?
Yeah.
She said your screen is in view. Your screen is in view, meaning you can see it. I think
Okay.
that's what she's saying.
Okay. There we go. Okay. So I really like this idea of the mindful versus mindful. And I'm not the type to read all of the information on every slide, but I do think that this quote, if I read it aloud, it sort of makes it a little more concrete. And that is the idea. I love the picture, with the human, of course, having a mind that's full. And I have two dogs, and I know that if I could be more like a dog, I could be more mindful, right? Just enjoying the moment, enjoying what is right in front of you. Okay, and the quote, be aware what is happening right now without wishing that it were somehow different. Enjoy pleasant times without holding on to them when they fade, which they will. Be with the unpleasant times without fearing that it will always be this way, which it won't. Now, when I've shown this quote, when I do a suicide intervention, some people who have had really serious thoughts of suicide, they say, the key to my suicidal thoughts is that I fear that the pain and the suffering and the unpleasant times that I'm dealing with right now will go on forever. But with the help and support of other people, and having an internal struggle for sure, that they realize that unpleasant times come and go. I think it's Maya Angelou who said, maybe I have the wrong name there, but I think this is Maya Angelou who said, every storm eventually runs out of rain. Okay. So that's a nice little quote, I think, to get us started. I imagine, as I was saying to Athea before we started, that I'm assuming that you have some background in mindfulness. So I'm going to go quickly through here. Some of this will be like a little refresher or a reminder. Using a couple of different slides to talk about a definition. There isn't really one definition, but the art and practice of being in the here and now, being in the present. And this is a picture, of course, of the sort of grandfather of Western mindfulness. We know that the term mindfulness is not new. In fact, the practice of mindfulness, going back thousands of years to the Far East. Okay, but in terms of, we'll call it the Western or modern mindfulness, Jon Kabat-Zinn is sort of the grandfather of all of that. He defines mindfulness as the awareness the awareness that emerges through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. I really think that that's powerful because I've been reading a book recently by Stephen Levitan, and he says that paying attention on purpose, if we can consciously switch back and forth our attention from one thing to consciously switch our attention to another thing, that is like a superpower. When we are overwhelmed and our attention is being, for lack of a better word, and he uses this word, hijacked, that our attention is being pulled in so many different ways, then we become dysregulated and we find it more difficult to self-regulate. And when we're not self-regulated, it's very difficult to teach others. And in this case, I'm talking about kids to regulate, to co-regulate with them. Okay. So that idea of paying attention on purpose, in fact, paying attention to what you're paying attention to is one way I like to say it. And also non-judgmentally. If you go back to the previous slide, non-judgmentally, we should never feel, I was at a mental health forum today that talked about the fact that it's okay sometimes to not be okay. It's okay to have, as my kids say, big feels. It's okay to get angry. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel, super happy. It's all okay. We want to deal with what is going on in our lives non-judgmentally. Very easy for me to sit here many, many miles away from all of you and say, don't judge yourself, don't beat yourself up. But CBT and DBT very much talks about how we talk to ourselves, how we deal with the thoughts that occur to us. And we have to realize that we are not our thoughts. We have thoughts, but we can actually take a step back and observe our own thoughts, and we can formulate responses to our own thoughts rather than just being, like I used the word earlier, hijacked. Okay. It is also the ongoing ability to focus on what we're doing as we're doing it. If you're familiar with Thich Nhat Hanh, who is kind of the, if Jon Kabat-Zinn is the grandfather of Western mindfulness, Thich Nhat Hanh has a couple of really amazing, he passed away, I think within the last year, but he talks about such things as doing the dishes, right? Doing the dishes is not usually many people's version of fun. But doing the dishes can be a really amazing opportunity to be mindful, to feel the warm water, to feel and look at the, the bubbles that are forming, and to feel, he says, and some people, when I've said this, they say, oh, that's a little bit hokey, but feeling a sense of accomplishment when you're, cleaning that dish or that bowl or that glass and putting it up to dry. And then you dry them and put them all away. You've accomplished something. You've accomplished a task that had to be done. So why not have a mindset of making it, not a super enjoyable experience, but being in the moment there. The quote says, I am doing this now. This is how I am doing this, and this is why I am doing this. If you relate that to the idea of washing dishes, this is what I'm doing. It has to be done. The dishes can't sit there and get stinky and pile up, right? Well, tell my son that, but this is how I am doing this. You're actually paying very close attention to how your body is moving, how your hands are, in the warm or hot water. And then that final sense of putting the final dish away after you've dried them, or you can let them, air dry, I suppose, and then sitting down to enjoy maybe a cup of tea or reading a book or watching a favorite movie or Netflix show, rather than feeling, geez, I've got to do these darn dishes and it's taking away from my time that I want to enjoy, right? So that's another portion of mindfulness. And lastly, there is a portion of the definition of mindfulness that talks about self-regulation, a self-regulation of attention. We kind of briefly mentioned that already, with an attitude of curiosity, openness and acceptance. Be curious, be open, and be accepting. And that's with yourself, but also with others, specifically with the kids that we work with. Okay. So we're going to talk, the rest of this will be talking about self-regulation and co-regulation. But maybe I could put I'm going to actually come out of the share for a second. I'll come back to that in a moment. Now, how do I unshare? Oh, there we go. Stop share. So my question to you folks is, and you can either, I suppose, put it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself if you wish. If you were asked without looking it up online or looking in a dictionary, how would you define self-regulation? Either Denise, Carrie, Athea, how would you define self-regulation? There's no wrong answer here, actually. So, Carrie, did you want to say something? Oh, there we go.
Knowing of how you're feeling
Okay.
with the skill set to have some control over regulating that. I don't know.
No, actually, you know what? You're absolutely right. You used a really interesting word there, Carrie. The word control. We can, at a conscious level, we can start to control some of our subconscious feelings, thoughts, ideas, right? But when we talk about self-regulation is actually different than self-control. Okay, and I see Denise said being in control over yourself. Self-control is different than self-regulation. Yes, we want to be in control of ourselves. We want to be in control of our emotions, but that doesn't mean to say, I should not have this emotion. I should not be angry. You are angry.
Control is a really strong word, so I didn't really like that word because I think like control sounds maybe a little judging.
Okay, you make a good point. But go back to what we said a few moments ago. When we talk about control, like if somebody said to you, Carrie or Athea, you need to get control of yourself, right? That's almost like an insult. You're out of control. But the other part of this, if you flip that coin over, is when we talk about self-control, some people think that self-control means I need to control my emotions by not having certain emotions. And that is absolutely not what we're talking about, right? You want to feel all the emotions. You want to feel happy. Now, for me to say you want to feel sad, I don't want you to feel sad, but you will want to feel sadness in terms of why am I feeling sad? What is triggering this sadness? What is the root of my sadness? Because when we can name it, this is Brene Brown, you're probably all familiar with her. When you can name it, you can begin to tame it. Right? If you name your emotion, and I'm going to take you through a couple slides in a few moments. If you can name it, you can tame it. If you have coping mechanisms that you realize dealing with stress that are not working for you, then you're going to discard those. I call it putting new tools in your toolbox, right? You have tools in your toolbox. Some of them are rusty. Some of them need to be cleaned. Some of them need to be oiled. Some of them need to be sharpened. Some of them need to be discarded if you're going to put new tools in your toolbox, right? And so let's finish that by talking about the idea that self-regulation is not about not having emotions. It's about recognizing what those emotions are and then creating, I'm using my hands as an example, creating a space. You've probably heard this or done this before. Oh, yes, Athea, homeostasis and balance. I actually, I love those words. When we're talking about I really like the word balance. Homeostasis is a great word too. When we find a balance, it means that we will feel all of the emotions, but that we will, and I'm not saying be a stoic, right? But you want to be able to Again, I'm using my hands. You want to be able to avoid being hijacked and having a knee-jerk reaction to stress or to some situation or somebody is pushing your buttons, right? The idea is that you want to take a breath. When people say count to 10, there's a reason for that, right? Gives you time to think. It lets you sort of, control your breathing a little bit. But the idea is that you want to create a space where rather than just reacting in a knee-jerk sort of reaction, if a kid that you're working with is having a little bit of agitation or maybe a meltdown, are we going to have a knee-jerk reaction and tell them to stop crying? Well, they are crying. So does anybody ever calm down when you tell them to calm down? No, right? It does, those types of things don't work. So we want to, I'm talking a little bit about other people now, other people in your life, but the kids that you're working with, when they're having a big emotion, validate it. Tell them that you're with them and that it's okay to have that feeling, right? It's okay to have that emotion, but let's make sure that nobody gets hurt. There was accepting without judgment. Yeah, and that was similar to what was on one of the other slides. So let me jump back in. Boy, time really flies here. I'm just looking at the clock. Let me share my screen again, and I'll go through. I may skip a few slides here just for the sake of. Okay, here we go. So when we talk about mindsets, again, this is probably a term that is familiar to you. I have read Carol Dweck's book called Mindsets twice. It's phenomenal. If you've never heard of it, or maybe if you've read it, it's time for a reread. When we are talking about self-regulation and then co-regulation, we're talking about trying to teach ourselves or to become conscious when we are in or we are functioning in a fixed mindset with the belief that the skills, my intellect, my talents are sort of set in stone and they're unchangeable. So if you go down the left-hand side of that chart, such things as I'll stick to what I know. I don't want to really take risks. I'm either good at it or I'm not. I can't get better. Everything is fine. Nothing needs to change. You can read all that for yourself. Sometimes this one about setbacks, it's easier to just give up. I'm not really that smart anyway. Well, a growth mindset, the belief that skills, intellect, and talents can be developed through practice and perseverance. I'll tell you what, I can barely draw stick people figures, right? They don't even look like humans, right? One leg is shorter than the other. But I follow this guy on Facebook, and he shows you some little techniques about how to draw perspective and how to use shadowing. And I follow very, very closely. And I've got a booklet here that I use. And for 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, I like to relax with him showing me how to draw. Now I don't need his videos. I've actually learned a little bit about how to draw myself. I'm no Picasso or, Michelangelo, but I'm not bad. I've shown some of my work to some folks, and I always told myself I could never draw, I could never paint, but it is something I'm interested in improving. And so you look down that chart, the growth mindset, I like the fourth one down under setbacks. If I fail, my mistakes help me learn. And if I fail, I will try another strategy. And about recognizing my own weaknesses and persevering to try and figure things out. So that's a big part of self-regulation. Now, here's a little chart quickly. You can read that for yourself, but really, I think that some people, especially people who are not in education, but even some who are in education, they feel that self-regulation is a program. So on the right-hand side, I have self-regulation is not. It's not a program. There are things you can teach to kids, for sure. It's not specifically focused on classroom management, but I will tell you that's by being self-regulated and co-regulating with students, then a byproduct of that is good classroom management. And we don't segregate children with challenging behaviors. This is inclusive of all children. So sort of going towards the left column there, it's a process, it's not a program. It helps children learning to respond to stress in terms of what are their behaviors, what are their abilities and motivations, social struggles, and so on, and some strong emotions. It is inclusive of all children, but self-regulation and co-regulation, self-regulation, and self-monitoring is a really big part of life skills that I taught for decades to children who were on the autism spectrum, children who were diagnosed ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorder, opposition defiance disorder, and those types of things, right? It really is about forming relationships and the environment and the day-to-day functioning of the child. It is not a series of lessons. You know, Monday we're going to do this lesson on self-regulation, Tuesday. Now, you can do what I would call in quotes lessons. You can actually take the time to have a teachable moment or a teachable few moments with children, but it's not a program. It's not necessarily a series of lessons. It's a moment to moment, hour to hour, day to day forming of relationships. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I see that I don't have the clock on my computer, but it looks like we've got about my time is 7:37, 6:37 your time. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what I call the self-regulation process. We'll talk a little bit about emotions, and then I have a couple of slides that I'd like to show you at the very end and leave a few moments for Q&A. Okay? Okay, so I call these the 5 R's. I took a foundational program through a gentleman named Stuart Shanker. He is a Canadian fellow. I think he's pretty well known worldwide, and he's sort of the guru of self-regulation. I took a foundational program with him, and what I gleaned and sort of synthesized out of all of the things that I learned from his books and his webinars and seminars that I attended is that there are 5 R's, okay? And the 5 R's are these. The first one is when we are talking about self-regulating and co-regulating with the children, we want to, again, I'll say this the second time, it's very easy for me to sit here and say, you need to know how to recognize your stressors. But one of the really key things is I talk about journaling. I talk about, if it's not a straight ahead journaling, just writing down on a piece of paper can be very, very powerful to learn how to recognize those things that in your life that cause you stress, whether it's finances, whether it's, you know, arguments with your significant other or your kids or the people you work with or the kids you work with. When you recognize who pushes your buttons, what pushes your buttons, you will be better able to deal with them, okay? Now, there's going to be 5 slides, and they will all look very similar to this, okay? So recognizing stressors, the first bullet, or the first box there, pardon me, is always going to say, I am learning. So we have to take it upon ourselves. I mean, I can't do this in an hour, right? This is a lifelong sort of journey that you're on. I am learning about my biological, cognitive, social, and emotional stressors. I'm going to come back to those 4 a little bit later. Biological, cognitive, social, and emotional stressors. Okay? Secondly, these slides will always, the second box will say with assistance. Now, when I say with assistance, this means maybe with, in some cases, even professional help if necessary, but with assistance from people in my support network, people that I care about, people that I love. I also will use the word assistance to say assistance could be watching videos. It could be listening to I'm like the podcast king. I listen to podcasts as much as I can every day. I travel a lot and I listen to podcasts in the car. So that I'm talking about assistance from people, but I'm also talking about assistance from various written materials, various, like I said, podcasts or YouTubes or documentaries. Okay. Then the third box will always say on my own. So we're going from I am learning to with assistance to on my own. Okay, with assistance, I can spot my own significant stressors affecting my behavior, my mood, and my energy levels, because those are all tied together. Then on my own, I recognize which stressors are having an impact on me, especially if I am experiencing more than one stressor at a time. We all know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Sometimes when we're under stress, whatever the situation may be, at work, at home, um, that initial stress leads to other stress, and it starts to scaffold, right? And one stress leads to another, and we get, in some cases, we just get really completely burned out, right? And we need to take that step back and say, okay, what is the impact that these stressors are having on me? Then the last box here, I understand which stressors I can reduce or remove to lower my own stress. I can then start to read stress in others, and I can help them. If you go back around the loop, you can co-regulate with folks in your life, thinking about the kids that you work with or your family. You can help them recognize their own stressors and help them learn about stressors and assist them. And then hopefully they will get to a point where they're on their own, they're able to do these things. Okay. Okay. So each of these, I'm going to go quickly through the next few. That's the first R of 5. The second R is reducing stress. Now, everybody reduces stress or uses stress management techniques. Some may work for me, they may not work for you. Some are pretty global, they tend to work for a lot of people. My go-to is meditation. I've been doing it for 3.5 decades. Formal and informal meditation. I don't really have time to get too deep into that, but if you've never tried meditating, it can be a challenge to start. If you have been meditating and you're finding it challenging, stick with it. But if you've been meditating for a while and then maybe you haven't meditated for a couple of years or something, maybe try to get, and I'm not talking sitting in a dark room, chanting Om, with incense burning. I'm talking about finding some simple, straightforward meditation techniques that work for you. In the book I have written, I talk about probably more than a dozen different meditation techniques, but you've got to find the one that works for you. But there's other ways of reducing stress, right? Going for a simple walk, oh, you know what, folks? Take a break. Take a break. One real great way to reduce stress, very simple for me to say, is to take care of yourself. You can't take care of others unless you're taking care of yourself, right? Okay. So here's the I am learning ways to reduce my stress. Try a whole bunch, do some reading, watch some videos, listen to some podcasts, download an app. Learn ways to reduce your stress. And then with assistance, you can figure out ways to reduce or remove those stressors that are affecting your own behaviors. And if you're self-aware, you'll understand how stress is causing you to behave in ways that maybe you're not too proud of. How is it affecting your mood levels? And how is it affecting your energy levels? Of course, we can talk all about getting sleep, proper amounts of sleep, and taking a break from people and things that are stressing you. On my own, I have managed to reduce stress in myself and others. And I know which actions I can take to reduce or remove stressors from my life. I said this in a workshop not too long ago, and a couple of people were a bit taken aback. But one way of reducing stress is to cut the time with people. Again, you know this already, but whether you're actually doing it or not, and I know I've been guilty of this, is cutting people out of your life who cause you undue stress. Now that it's hard to cut out family or friends, but when it is a case where I don't want to say it's a toxic relationship necessarily, it could be where that person is just simply not reciprocating. They are take all the time, and you never get anything in return. I have learned this hard lesson. Sometimes I have cut those people out of my life and I miss them for a period of time, and then I realize I'm better without them. Now you can't do that with your necessarily with your family, although I do know some people who have cut important members of their family out just because it's too stressful. The holidays are coming. We know that that can cause a bit of stress, right? But that's part of it. Now, the third one is to reframe the behavior. What we're talking about here is to learn a little bit more about your brain. I do a lot of the bigger, longer trainings in mindfulness, emotional regulation. I have a background, I have a psychology degree, and my focus in university decades ago was cognitive psychology and neuroscience. And I've kept up to date with all of the research over the last number of decades. Although I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I have kept up to date with all of it. Learning about how your brain works and the different parts of the brain and how you can actually calm your brain at a conscious level and recognizing your unconscious stress, how the stress is affecting behaviors, moods, energy. With assistance, I can spot signs of stress in myself, and I begin to be able to spot stress in others, and I can be proactive. Think of the kids that you work with. One great way to co-regulate with kids is to recognize signs of stress early before they get too agitated or maybe heading towards some sort of a meltdown, right? I am able to understand and reframe my behavior when looking back on a situation. So you might be saying, well, reframing, what does that actually mean? That is the ability to, if you can do it in the moment, it's amazing. But often it's hindsight. You know, we say hindsight is 2020. Is that if you're in a similar situation or you are having similar emotions, that you will be able to deal with that situation in a different way by reframing the behavior. In essence, replacing the behavior, changing the behavior. Again, that's part of that is a little bit of the CBT and DBT that I've been talking about. Being able to read your own stress and using your own self-regulation skills. Calm begets calm. When a kid is agitated, if a kid is having a meltdown, we do understand that as the adult in the room, we need to be as calm as possible. We are the model of calm, right? Okay. Now, the fourth one is reflecting. This is really important. Not ruminating. That's a whole other word, right? Reflecting. That, and again, you can journal this. You can specifically set time aside in a day to say to yourself, I want to reflect on the day. What did I learn? What did I what mistake or mistakes did I make? What can I learn from them? I personally, like I said, I love to write them down, and then I can go back to them, and it's really helpful for me. So you're learning about feeling and being calm. With assistance, you notice when you are calm and what calm actually feels like in your body. Because calm is not just a state of mind in your brain, right? Calm is your entire body. And a little bit about what we did in that first exercise is about calming your body. On my own, I notice the feeling of being calm. I actually reflect and I say, oh, I am calm right now. As I'm maybe becoming a little anxious, I can try to bring myself back to calm as fast as possible. I'm focused, I'm alert, and I notice when I'm not calm. Okay. I am aware when I am stressed. I am fully consciously aware I am stressed. Here's what's stressing me. Here's what I think I can do about it. I understand when I'm feeling dysregulated. I know my energy states and my stress responses. Okay. These are all things that when we are doing them as part of a self-regulation, we can teach some of these things to children in the, like I said, it's not a program, but moment to moment, hour to hour, day to day, and weeks and months can go by, and you can really have a big impact on children. And the last one is to respond. Remember, I said before, we don't want to get hijacked. We don't want to have knee-jerk reaction. I mean, unless there's an emergency and you have to act in the moment, that's one thing. But if it is a situation that has developed, take a beat, take a step back, take a couple of deep breaths, and formulate a response to a situation rather than allowing yourself to be hijacked, okay? Learning about ways to fill your own energy tank back up, like driving a gasoline-powered car. When you get down to the final few drops of gas and then you're running on fumes, okay, your car may just, when it's used up all of its energy, it's empty. And hopefully you're not stuck out in the middle of the wilderness. With assistance, you're learning how others are using coping strategies to help fill their tanks. Maybe you can tie in and ask them how they do it. When you have learned some of your own, you have all your own coping strategies right now, right? You have your own toolbox. But when you can learn coping strategies that work for you, depending on the age of the children, and their capacity to be able to understand how to use these coping strategies, okay, they can fill their own tanks. So on your own, you're using strategies to deal with stress, filling your tank back up, and then having almost like a bank or that toolbox of strategies that you use to cope with your stressors. You will begin to know how to manage, it says manage yourself. And when you are feeling your energy depleting, how can you re-energize? Okay, so those are 5 R's. Looking at my watch, it looks like we've got about 7 minutes. So I'm going to show you one slide just as a taste, okay, of we talked about this before in terms of stressors: biological, cognitive, social, and emotional. But I want to move to the bottom left there, the emotional. All of those other ones are very important, but the emotional: happy, sad, angry, afraid, ashamed. I don't know if you knew this. Maybe you do. If you're a fan of Brené Brown, which I am, a huge fan, she says in her new book, Atlas of the Heart, that there are, she says approximately, because there might be a few more, a few less, 87 different emotions or feelings that we can have. 87, wow. But there are what we call 5 core emotions or 5 core feelings, and they are happy, sad, anger, fear, and shame. And all of the other emotions that you could name will fall under one of these 5. And some people say to me, but Steve, there's only one good one on there. That's not true. You can very much learn from your sadness. When you are fearful, that stress sometimes of being fearful, but what are some of the greatest accomplishments that you have had in your life was overcoming your fear of doing something, and in the end you say, wow, I overcame that. But fear can lead to anxiety. Shame is an interesting one too, because we use words like guilt and shame interchangeably sometimes. And it's funny that guilt and shame are actually 2 different things. Guilt is actionable. If you did or said something to somebody that maybe hurt them, or you should have done something or said something to somebody and you didn't, then you can feel guilty about that, but it's actionable. You can try to make amends. You can try to repair that rupture in the relationship. They may not accept that, but you can try. Shame is a different thing. It can include guilt, but it's when people feel shame, internal shame, they feel, I feel guilty for doing these things or not doing these things, saying these things and not saying these things, because I am a bad person. deep down in my core, I am a bad person. And these are essentially mindsets, right? Okay. So here is one slide that I'll show you. And then I'll move to the last couple slides. I wanted to show you a couple of exercises. The key here, when we're talking about happy, sad, fear, anger, we want to be able, remember I said before, if you can name it, you can tame it. We really want to be clear at the level of intensity of our emotions or our feelings. If we're feeling happy, are we elated, like the kids in the top of the slide there? Are they just sort of feeling pretty good, satisfied, like the guy in the center? Or are we feeling sort of a lower level of happiness? We're just sort of glad, we're pleased, we're kind of mellow, okay? And I'll flip through these ones really quickly. You want to look at the intensity of your sadness. You want to look at the intensity of your anger. You want to look at the intensity of your fear or being afraid. You also want to take a look at your fear of your level of shame. Okay. Now I would normally go into much more detail there and have like a breakout session and all that. But just as an idea, if you recall anything from those last few slides, is the idea that when you can identify not only the emotion, one of the 5 core emotions, but you can identify the intensity of the feelings and give that shame a name, you're better prepared to deal with it. And we can definitely teach kids that. Okay, I'm going to skip that one slide because in the last
Hey,
2
Steve,
minutes.
Denise asked, can you repost briefly the slide of sadness?
Sure.
Okay.
This,
Go.
yeah.
Yep.
Was there a question? Or
I think she just wanted to see the slide really quick.
okay.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this like I said would form a much larger part of a much bigger workshop. So let me skip ahead. I have a number of these, but I'm going to show you 2. And then I know I'll probably be out of time, but I can stay on for a few minutes if anybody had any questions. When we talk, I took a foundational program, 7 or 8 years ago with a gentleman who taught me this idea of BBABC, and that stands for bilateral, biomeridian, and awareness-based calming techniques and tools. You may be familiar with this one. If a person is feeling if you're feeling agitated, if a kid you're working with or somebody you live with or member of your family or friends, if they're feeling upset or agitated and you can see they're kind of ramping up their anxiety, what you can do is have them essentially just like the picture of the lady. This is called the butterfly hug. And you would fold your arms across your chest and you apply pressure to one of the upper biceps and then to the other side and then to the other side and back and forth. This bilateral biomeridian means that we are activating both sides of our brain. And that's a whole other workshop, right? By activating both sides. And just, I know when I do this, it can really help me bring to calm. You can do it up to 20 or 30. You can stop, you can pause and try again. So that is a really interesting one, a very common one called the butterfly hug. I'll show you one more. This is called the collarbone activation. And if you were to say, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, if you go sort of from the edge of your collarbone under your throat, and then you have the edge of your collarbone out near your shoulder, if you go about halfway, okay, and come down about an inch below the middle section of your collarbone. And I don't know if you can see that, I'm just applying a bit of a circular motion there. Ooh, I'm actually feeling a fair bit of tension. It is amazing how much tension we keep in our body, but in these specific this specific location. So if you apply pressure for a count of 1, okay, and then it says the other. Now, that's my mistake. It should say do this on the same side for up to 20, up to 10 maybe, 10 or 20. Then you would switch sides, find that space, and you would. So that's, I was playing around with this slide. That shouldn't say count of one, then the other. It should say count to 10 on the same side. That's my fault. And very similar to that one is this space between your thumb and your index finger. If you just place some pressure there, I've had a pretty long, a little bit of a strenuous day, and I can feel there are so many nerves that end in that space between your thumb and your index finger. If you gently massage that. Now, I say that you can do these BBABC exercises by yourself, but you can also teach them to children. You can, with permission, you can actually take their hand in your hand with permission, right? And you can show them the motion. You can show them with permission that activation of the collarbone. In some cases, I would have children, especially children who were on the spectrum, and they would fold their hands over like this, getting ready to do a butterfly hug. And then with their permission and their parents' permission, I would come in behind them and I would fold my arms over their arms and we would do the butterfly hug together. Okay. I don't think you just jump in and say, hey kid, I'm going to give you a butterfly hug. Okay. So that's only that's 2 or 3 of what, there's probably more than a dozen of BBABC tools, bilateral biomeridian, stimulating both sides of the brain and both sides of the body.
Those are
I'm sorry.
great. Yeah,
thank you.
I was just, those were really great. I'm familiar with this, but
Yeah.
this part was new for
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I love this one, the
Isn't it
hand.
funny?
Yeah,
Isn't it funny
this
though
is- and
how
this-
much tension we
Yeah,
hold there?
this
Yeah.
I can see this being a great one for
Yeah.
later students.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've taken you a few extra minutes. I apologize for that, but if people have to go, I understand. I'm sorry, Ethi. I didn't really leave much time for Q&A, but
Yeah,
I can stay on. I'm fine for
Of
time.
course. I know we had to have someone already leave. Thank you,
Okay.
Denise, for coming. Carrie left just a little bit earlier. She
Yeah,
had
that's
something she
okay.
had to get to. Emily joined us late, but if you do have any questions, you can put them in now. Of course, if you
Sure.
do think of them, you can put them in our member library when I put this PD in there. So